It started with a receipt that wasn't mine. A folded piece of paper tucked beneath our coffee table, creased, faintly perfumed with sea salt. 2 tickets. First class. Destination Honolulu. Date next week. Passenger 1 Ethan Cole. Passenger 2 Clara James. Clara, his ex. The one who still emailed about taxes and needed help with her dog. Only this time her whole family was traveling too. For a moment the room tilted. I could hear the ocean without being near it. I didn't scream. I didn't ask. I just slid the receipt back where I found it, like a clue I wasn't meant to disturb. He came home that evening humming. Kissed my forehead. Talked about a business seminar in Seattle. I smiled, matching his lie with silence. Break time equals 2/. My name is Madison Cole. I'm 28 years old and last month, my husband boarded a flight to Hawaii with his ex and her family, while I pretended not to know. If you're watching this, drop a comment. Tell me, have you ever stayed quiet just long enough to let someone bury their own secret? Hit like and subscribe. Because what happened after that flight rewrote my entire life. When he left, I didn't cry. I packed. Every file, every document, every shared item labeled ours, went into boxes labeled mine. I called a realtor the same afternoon. The penthouse, she said, almost gasping. It's prime real estate, Madison. You'll have buyers within days. Good, I replied. List it immediately. Break time equals 2/. For 3 years I had lived in that glass cage, Ethan's achievement view. I decorated it, paid the mortgage half the time, cooked on marble counters that never tasted of love. Now I was turning it into his mirror. By the time his plane touched down in Hawaii, the for sale sign was already glinting in the sun. And by the time his ex posted their first group photo, clinking cocktails, laughing at a beachside bar, the listing had gone live. He thought he'd returned to me. But he'd returned to a stranger's key. The call came before sunrise when the city was still a hush of elevators and blue light. Madison? It's Renee, your realtor, a bright voice said. You were right, the view sells itself. I have 3 private showings today and a cash buyer circling. Do you want to stage or sell as is? As is, I answered, watching the dark penthouse windows across from ours blink awake one by one. If it looks a little empty, that's the point. I set my phone on speaker and opened the closet safe. Passports. Marriage certificate. The prenuptial addendum Ethan insisted we didn't need, then forgot to sign. I slid everything into a document pouch. The zipper sounded like a new paragraph. Renee kept talking. Numbers, offers, timelines. If we accept a strong offer today, she said, we could close within 10 days. Make it 8, I said, feeling the decision plant roots. And add a clause. Seller reserves the right to vacate early. Break time equals 2/. You should know who I am beneath this calm. I grew up in a small New Mexico town where my mom, Carla, worked double shifts as a nurse, my stepdad, Dwayne, fixed heating units and tempers with equal stubbornness, my half-brother, Jace, lived on last chances and borrowed cars, and my grandma, June, the only soft rebel in our line, mailed me envelopes of clippings titled Proof You Can Leave. They love in crooked ways. They also taught me that staying doesn't mean safety. Ethan loved me like a trophy that could talk. A hedge fund smile, a penthouse handshake, a schedule that always had client dinners, tucked where tenderness should go. I learned his patterns the way you learn a trail, by walking it in the dark until your feet memorize the routes. When he texted me a photo from Hawaii, 2 palm trees captioned Long Day. Miss you. I saved it to a folder named Evidence of Weather. I replied with a heart and called a storage facility. 2 units. One under my name. One I wouldn't keep for long. Renee pinged again. Cash buyer wants to see at noon. He'll offer above ask if we close fast. Send the papers, I said. I'll sign. I looked around the penthouse, the echo already moving in. The only thing left of us was the way the carpet remembered our steps. At 11:42 a.m., I handed Renee the keys and a smile that didn't ask for permission. At 11:43, my phone buzzed with a new notification. International wire instructions from a bank in Lisbon. Because selling the view was only step 1. Changing the country would be step 2.3 hours after signing the sale documents. I sat in the penthouse alone, surrounded by echoes. The space looked like a gallery of absence. Bare walls, pale rectangles where art had been. Ethan's leather duffel still waited by the closet, the one he took on business trips. I left it. Some things deserve to be found, not forgiven. I spent the afternoon in the hum of logistics. Closing utilities, canceling subscriptions, wiring my half of the sale proceeds to Lisbon. I'd been quietly saving there for months. Every freelance check, every unspent stipend, every apology he'd forgotten to reimburse. I called it the escape fund, but the truth? It was an exit plan disguised as patience. Break time equals 2/. If you're still watching this, tell me, have you ever started planning your freedom while pretending everything was fine? Hit like and subscribe, because this isn't just a breakup story. It's a blueprint for walking away without looking back. The elevator dinged. I froze. A neighbor, Mrs. Hargrove, 82, wrapped in lilac perfume, peeked in. Moving already, dear? I smiled. Yes. Change of scenery. She nodded knowingly. Good for you. Sometimes the view blinds people. I helped her with her groceries and she slipped me an envelope from the front desk. Delivered for you this morning, she said. Inside, a postcard. Hibiscus printed across the front. On the back, a single line in Ethan's handwriting. Wish you were here. Maybe next time. The sound that left my throat wasn't laughter, wasn't crying. It was both. I slid the postcard into a drawer labeled for closure only. By evening, Renee called again. Madison, we have a full cash buyer. He wants it unoccupied by Friday. Perfect, I said. He can have it all, furniture included. I left one last thing behind, a note on Ethan's desk. Sold. Check the account balance if you still think it was yours. Then I zipped my suitcase, printed my flight confirmation, and whispered the only goodbye that mattered. This time I'm the one leaving. Break time equals 2/. But as I sealed my passport in my bag, I saw the shadow of an email, an alert from our joint account. Unusual activity detected. And I knew, Ethan was already trying to pull me back. By morning, the sunlight looked unfamiliar, too honest for a space built on half-truths. Coffee brewed, slow and bitter. My phone buzzed with the subject line I'd been expecting. Unauthorized transfer attempt, joint account, flagged. When I opened it, I saw the timestamp, 3:07 a.m. He was still in Hawaii. He tried to move $148,000, the same amount listed in the escrow summary. He must have realized the sale had closed and the funds weren't coming to him. Break time equals 2/. I called the bank. Mrs. Cole, the manager said carefully, do you authorize this transfer? I smiled at the irony. No. In fact, please freeze joint access. Permanently. He hesitated. You'll lose shared privileges. I already did, I said. Just make it official. The screen flickered. Confirmation. Felt like deleting a ghost. Then a message arrived from Ethan. Hey, I need you to fix whatever you did. It's an emergency. I'll explain when I'm back. I typed slowly. Already fixed. Everything's in my name now, including the freedom you never noticed. Sent. Delivered. No typing bubbles this time. Break time equals 2/. For context, Ethan came from old money but not his own. His father's construction empire had cracks, lawsuits, delays, unpaid workers. I'd married into chaos dressed like stability. And while he played investor, I paid for the quiet parts. Mortgage gaps, taxes, loyalty. My mom, Leah, an accountant who never learned peace from numbers, warned me once. If a man hides his passwords, hide your plans. So I did. By noon, I had a flight booked to Portugal, a tiny furnished apartment near the coast, already prepaid through my Lisbon account. Aunt Joanne, the only one who ever believed my version of love, had offered to meet me there. Still, I couldn't leave without one final act of grace, or closure depending on how you saw it. I logged into Ethan's email and forwarded every travel receipt, every beach photo captioned business, to his corporate compliance inbox. No comments, no revenge note, just proof. Then I powered off my phone. When silence returned, it wasn't lonely. It was earned. Break time equals 2/. Outside, the realtor's SUV pulled up with the final buyer contract. She waved, grinning. Congratulations, Madison. It's done. But even as I signed the last page, a thought tightened my chest. What if he came back early? Because some men don't chase love. They chase control. And his flight home was tomorrow. The following evening, the sky over the city turned the same color as the sea he'd left for her. A soft, deceiving blue. My flight was scheduled for dawn. One more night in the penthouse. One last round of pretending I was still part of this skyline. Then the message came through. Ethan, landed early. Be home in an hour. We need to talk. My pulse didn't spike. It slowed. The way calm does when it knows what's coming. I took one last walk through the place that used to be ours. Through the echo of his laughter, the ghost of my patience. The realtor had removed the art, the couch, the life. Only my packed suitcases waited by the door like quiet witnesses. On the kitchen island I left 3 envelopes. The sale contract. My plane ticket. A photo of us on our wedding day. Folded neatly, the crease running straight through his smile. Break time equals 2/. When the elevator dinged, I didn't hide. I stood by the window, hands folded. He walked in wearing the same travel shirt from those Hawaii photos. The ones I'd seen online. Tan deepened, guilt barely visible under it. Madison, he began, the words stretched with disbelief. What the hell did you do? I turned. What you taught me to do, Ethan. Pretend. He stepped closer. You sold the penthouse? Without me. I nodded. I thought you'd appreciate the symmetry. You went on a secret trip. I made a secret sale. His jaw clenched. You can't just disappear. We have assets. I cut him off. We had assets. Now we have outcomes. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. You're overreacting. It was business. Her family owns surf shops, Ethan. Not hedge funds. For a second the mask cracked. His eyes dropped. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. That's exactly what it means, I said quietly. Break time equals 2/. He scanned the empty apartment, maybe realizing that everything he'd collected had already chosen sides. I can fix this, he said finally. We can start over. I tilted my head. You already did in Hawaii. My suitcase handle clicked upright. He reached for my arm. Don't leave like this. I met his hand with a calm he didn't recognize. No one leaves, Ethan. Some of us just arrive somewhere better. I walked out before he could find the right apology to save himself. As the elevator doors closed, I caught one last glimpse. Ethan standing alone, surrounded by nothing. And for the first time, that penthouse finally looked honest. The city was still half asleep when I left for the airport. No cab, no noise, just the sound of wheels on tile and the faint hum of freedom under my breath. The sky bled pink over the skyline, the same color the ocean must have been when he smiled for her camera. I checked in early. Passport open, mind closed. The attendant smiled. One way to Lisbon, correct? I nodded. Exactly one way. I'd already transferred the sale proceeds. The account read like poetry. Clean numbers, no names I didn't trust. A text from Ethan flickered across my lock screen. You can't just run away from what we built. I typed back. I'm not running. I'm returning to myself. Then delete. Airplane mode. Break time equals 2/. If you're watching this, drop a comment. Tell me if you've ever realized peace costs less than pretending. Hit like and subscribe because sometimes the exit is quieter than the applause. At the boarding gate, I called Aunt Joanne, the only person who had known my plan. You really did it, didn't you? She said, voice breaking with pride. Yes, I whispered. And I'm not scared. She laughed softly. Good. Fear is just loyalty to the wrong story. I looked out at the tarmac, rows of planes waiting to rise. For years I'd mistaken height for happiness. Now altitude finally meant leaving. My phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number, local code. I almost ignored it, then answered. Mrs. Cole? A man's voice asked. This is Renee's associate. She wanted to confirm delivery of the closing documents. The buyer's attorney stopped by the penthouse this morning. Delivery's confirmed, I said. He hesitated. Actually, the buyer left something for you. A message. What message? He read from a note. Tell her the man she sold the view to says, sometimes losing what looks perfect gives you back what's real. I smiled. Tell him he's right. Break time equals 2/. The final boarding call echoed through the terminal. I took a slow breath, stepped forward and crossed the gate. Behind me, the world I'd built for someone else folded into memory. As the plane lifted through clouds, I looked down at the city shrinking beneath me. Somewhere in that maze of glass, Ethan was still pacing, still dialing numbers that would never connect. And high above him, I whispered the truth aloud. He thought I was running away. But I was finally heading home. The air in Lisbon felt nothing like New York. It was softer, slower, and kind in ways I didn't know air could be. When I stepped out of the taxi, the city greeted me with orange rooftops, salt in the breeze, and strangers who smiled without agenda. My apartment was small, sunlit, and smelled faintly of coffee from the cafe below. No marble counters, no skyline view, just quiet. Exactly what I'd been starving for. I set my luggage by the window and exhaled for the first time in years. The sound surprised me. It wasn't relief. It was resurrection. Aunt Joanne arrived an hour later, her scarf flapping like a flag of arrival. She looked at me the way people look at survivors. "You look lighter," she said. "I sold the weight," I replied. We unpacked in silence. 2 mugs, a photo of my mom and me before I became someone's wife, a few books that still smelled like hope. Break time equals 2/. That night we sat on the balcony with grilled sardines and cheap wine. The city pulsed below, soft jazz leaking from some open window. "Do you think he'll come after you?" Joanne asked. "Maybe," I said, staring at the ocean in the distance. "But if he does, he'll only find what he left behind." My laptop pinged, a new email. Subject line, Ethan Cole, notice of funds. I hesitated, then opened it. It was a message from our bank manager. "Mrs. Cole, following your previous authorization, please note the joint account has been dissolved. Remaining assets have been credited to your sole account ending 4213. Your husband's transfer attempts have been legally declined." I smiled, then hit archive. He'd built his world on access. Now even the system had learned my favorite word. No. Break time equals 2/. If you're still watching this, tell me, have you ever realized that silence is stronger than shouting? Leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe. Sometimes power doesn't roar, it just quietly refuses to return. At midnight I walked down to the river. Street lamps rippled across the water like moving gold. I whispered the city's name, Lisboa, like it was a person, and it answered with wind. Then I tossed Ethan's postcard, the one with the hibiscus, into the tide. It floated, then sank, taking the last lie with it. And just as I turned to leave, a familiar voice called my name. It had been 3 weeks since I arrived in Lisbon. The rhythm of the city had become my own. Fresh bread in the mornings, quiet sunsets, nights that smelled of sea and forgiveness. Peace had a sound now. It was the sound of nothing missing. So when someone knocked at my door just after dusk, my heart didn't panic. It paused. I opened it halfway. Standing there, sunburnt, exhausted, and wearing regret like a second skin, was Ethan. He looked smaller without his certainty. His perfect tan had faded into guilt. "Madison," he said softly. "You actually left." "I didn't leave," I said. "I arrived." He exhaled, glancing past me into the small, quiet apartment that didn't have room for both of us. "I came to fix things," he whispered. "You sold the penthouse, drained the account. Why? Because I stopped mistaking ownership for love. Break time equals 2/. He rubbed his temple, desperate now. "We can start over here. I'll get a place nearby. I just need a chance." I studied him. "You had chances. You traded them for a beach you called business." His voice cracked. "It was stupid. It didn't mean anything." "Then why did you choose it over me?" He didn't answer. His eyes fell to the floor. Outside, a tram rattled by. Its sound carried like closure. I stepped into the doorway, one hand on the frame. "Ethan, there's nothing left to fix. I sold a view, not a life. And this time I'm not taking anything back." He swallowed hard. "You'll regret this." I smiled faintly. "No. I'll remember it. Break time equals 2/. He left without another word. I watched him disappear down the cobblestone street, the sunset painting his shadow longer than his promises ever were. Inside, Aunt Joanne poured 2 cups of tea. He came. I nodded. And left. Finally. We clinked our mugs gently, like a quiet toast to freedom. Break time equals 2/. If If you've ever had to walk away from someone who mistook your silence for surrender, tell me your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, because sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's just living well enough that they have to watch from afar. I stood on the balcony, Lisbon lights flickering across the water, and whispered. He went to Hawaii for a fantasy. I came to Lisbon for peace. And for the first time, peace answered back. She left quietly, and won completely.